members become lopsided, they are disciplined by the High Blade, and are assigned their gleanings for the next year, rather than being allowed to choose for themselves. It is a sign of shame. The Index is supposed to keep the world free from cultural and genetic bias, but aren't there underlying factors that we can't escape? For instance, who decided that the first number of one's genetic index would be Caucasoid? From the Gleaning Journal of H.S. Curie. 4. Learner's Permit to Kill. Forget what you think you know about science. Leave behind your preconceived notions. Your education begins today. Citra could not believe she was actually going through with this. What secret, self-destructive part of herself had asserted its will over her? What had possessed her to accept the apprenticeship? Now there was no backing out. Yesterday, on the third day of the new year, Scythe Faraday had come to her apartment and had given a year's immunity to her father and brother. He added several months to her mother's, so their immunity would all expire at the same time. Of course, if Citra was chosen to be a full Scythe, their immunity would become permanent. Her parents were tearful when she left. Citra wondered whether they were tears of sorrow, joy, or relief. Perhaps a combination of all three. "We know you'll do great things in this world," her father had said. And she wondered, what about bringing death could be considered great? "Do not be so arrogant as to think you have a license to glean. The license is mine, and mine alone. At most you have, shall we say, a learner's permit. I will, however, require at least one of you to be present at each of my gleanings. And if I ask you to assist, you will." Citra unceremoniously withdrew from school and said goodbye to friends in awkward little conversations. "It's not like I won't be around. I just won't be at school anymore." But who was she kidding? Accepting this apprenticeship put her on the outside of an impenetrable wall. It was both demoralizing, yet heartening, to know that life would go on without her. And it occurred to her that being a Scythe was just like being the living dead, in the world, but apart from it, just a witness to the comings and goings of others. We are above the law, but that does not mean we live in defiance of it. Our position demands a level of morality beyond the rule of law. We must strive for incorruptibility, and must assess our motives on a daily basis. While she did not wear a ring, Citra was given an armband to identify her as a Scythe's apprentice. Rowan had one too. Bright green bands bearing the curved blade of a farmer's scythe above an unblinking eye, the double symbol of the scythehood. That symbol would become a tattoo on the arm of the chosen apprentice. Not that anyone would ever see the tattoo, for Scythes are never seen in public without their robes. Citra had to tell herself that there was an out. She could fail to perform. She could be a lousy apprentice. She could sabotage herself so completely that Honorable Scythe Faraday would be forced to choose Rowan and return her to her family at the end of the year. The problem was that Citra was very bad at doing things half-assed. It would be much harder for her to fail than to succeed. I will not tolerate any romantic notions between the two of you, so banish the thought from your mind now. Citra had looked over at Rowan when the Scythe said that, and Rowan had shrugged. "Not a problem," he said, which irritated Citra. At the very least, he could have voiced some minor disappointment. "Yeah," Citra said. "No hope of that, with or without the rule." Rowan had just grinned at that, which had made her even more annoyed. "You shall study history, the great philosophers, the sciences. You will come to understand the nature of life and what it means to be human, before you are permanently charged with the taking of life. You will also study all forms of killcraft and become experts." Like Citra, Rowan found himself unsettled by his decision to take this on, but he was not going to show it, especially not to Citra. And in spite of the blasé attitude he showed her, he was, in fact, attracted to her. But he knew even before the Scythe forbade them that such a pursuit could not end well. They were adversaries after all. Like Citra, Rowan had stood beside Scythe Faraday as the man held out his ring to each member of his family, offering them immunity. His brothers, sisters, half-siblings, grandma, and her all-too-perfect husband, who Rowan suspected might actually be a bot. Each in turn knelt respectfully and kissed the ring, transmitting their DNA to the worldwide immunity database in the Scythedom's own special cloud, separate and apart from the Thunderhead. The rule was that all members of an apprentice's household would receive immunity for 1 year, and there were 19 people in Rowan's sprawling household. His mother had mixed feelings, because now no one would move out for at least a year to make sure their immunity would become permanent once Rowan received his side's ring, if he got the ring. The only glitch had been when the ring vibrated, giving off a little alarm, refusing immunity to his grandmother's new husband, because he was a bot after all. You shall live as I do, modestly, and subsisting on the goodwill of others. You will take no more than you need, and waste nothing. People will attempt to buy your friendship. They will lavish things upon you, except nothing but the barest of human necessities. Faraday had brought Rowan and Citra to his home to begin their new lives. It was a small bungalow in a run-down part of the city that Rowan hadn't even known existed. People playing at poverty, he had told them. Because no one was impoverished anymore. Austerity was a choice, for there were always those who shunned the plenty of the post-mortal world. Faraday's home was Spartan. Little decoration, unimpressive furniture. Rowan's room had space for only a bed and a small dresser. Citra at least had a window, but the view was of a brick wall. I will not tolerate childish pastimes or vapid communications with friends. Commitment to this life means leaving behind your old life as fully as possible. When, a year from now, I choose between you, the unchosen one can return to his or her former life easily enough. But for now, consider that life a part of your past. Once they were settled in, he didn't allow them to brood over their circumstances. As soon as Rowan had unpacked his bags, the Scythe announced that they were going to the market. To glean? Rowan asked, more than a little sick at the prospect. No. To get food for the two of you, Faraday told them. Unless you'd prefer to eat my leftovers. Citra smirked at Rowan for asking, as if she hadn't been worrying about that herself. I liked you a lot more before I knew you, he told her. You still don't know me, she answered, which was true. Then she sighed, and for the first time since their night at the opera, she offered up something more than attitude. We're being forced to live together, and forced to compete at something neither of us wants to compete over. I know it's not your fault, but it doesn't exactly put us in a friendly place. I know, Rowan admitted. After all, Citra didn't own all the tension between them. But that still doesn't mean we can't have each other's backs. She didn't answer him. He didn't expect her to. It was just a seed he wanted to plant. Over the past 2 months, he had learned that no one had his back anymore. Perhaps no one ever did. His friends had pulled away. He was a footnote in his own family. There was only one person now who shared his plight. That was Citra. If they couldn't find a way to trust each other, then what did they have beyond a learner's permit to kill? The greatest achievement of the human race was not conquering death. It was ending government. Back in the days when the world's digital network was called the cloud, people thought giving too much power to an artificial intelligence would be a very bad idea. Cautionary tales abounded in every form of media. The machines were always the enemy. But then the cloud evolved into the Thunderhead, sparking with consciousness, or at least a remarkable facsimile. In stark contrast to people's fears, the Thunderhead did not seize power. Instead, it was people who came to realize that it was far better suited to run things than politicians. In those days before the Thunderhead, human arrogance, self-interest, and endless infighting determined the rule of law. Inefficient, imperfect, vulnerable to all forms of corruption. But the Thunderhead was incorruptible. Not only that, but its algorithms were built on the full sum of human knowledge. All the time and money wasted on political posturing, the lives lost in wars, the populations abused by despots, all gone the moment the Thunderhead was handed power. Of course, the politicians, dictators, and warmongers weren't happy, but their voices, which had always seemed so loud and intimidating, were suddenly insignificant. The Emperor not only had no clothes, turns out he had no testicles either. The Thunderhead quite literally knew everything. When and where to build roads, how to eliminate waste in food distribution and thus end hunger, how to protect the environment from the ever-growing human population. It created jobs, it clothed the poor, and it established the world code. Now, for the first time in history, law was no longer the shadow of justice. It was justice. The Thunderhead gave us a perfect world. The utopia that our ancestors could only dream of is our reality. There was only one thing the Thunderhead was not given authority over: the Scythedom. When it was decided that people needed to die in order to ease the tide of population growth, it was also decided that this must be the responsibility of humans. Bridge repair and urban planning could be handled by the Thunderhead, but taking a life was an act of conscience and consciousness. Since it could not be proven that the Thunderhead had either, the Scythedom was born. I do not regret the decision. I often wonder if the Thunderhead would have done a better job. From the Gleaning Journal of H.S. Curie. 5. But I'm only 96. While a trip to the market should be an ordinary, everyday occurrence, Citra found that food shopping with a scythe carried its own basket of crazy. The moment the market doors parted for them and the three of them stepped in, the dread around them was enough to raise goose flesh on Citra's arms. Nothing so blatant as gasps or screams. People were used to scythes passing through their daily lives. It was silent, but pervasive, as if they had just accidentally strolled onto some theatrical stage and fouled the performance. Citra noticed that, in general, there were three types of people. One, the deniers. These were the people who forged on and pretended the scythe wasn't there. It wasn't just a matter of ignoring him, it was actively, willfully denying his presence. It reminded Citra of the way very small children would play hide and seek, covering their own eyes to hide, thinking that if they couldn't see you, then you couldn't see them. 2. The escape artists. These were the people who ran away, but tried to make it look as if they weren't. They suddenly remembered they forgot to get eggs, or began chasing after a running child that didn't actually exist. One shopper abandoned a cart, mumbling about a wallet he must have left at home, despite an obvious bulge in his back pocket. He hurried out, and didn't come back. 3. The scythe's pets. These were the people who went out of their way to engage the scythe and offer him something, with the secret, not so secret, hope that he might grant them immunity, or at least glean the person to their right instead of them someday. Here, Your Honor, take my melon, it's bigger. I insist. Did these people know that such sycophantic behavior would make a scythe want to control even more? Not that Citra would want to level a death penalty for such a thing, but if she were given a choice between some innocent bystander and someone who was being nauseatingly obsequious about their produce, she'd choose the melon giver. There was one shopper who didn't seem to fit the other three profiles. A woman who actually seemed pleased to see him. Good morning, Scythe Faraday, she said as they passed her near the deli counter, then looked at Citra and Rowan, curious. Your niece and nephew? Hardly, he said with a bit of disdain in his voice for relatives Citra had no interest in knowing about. I've taken apprentices. Her eyes widened a bit. Such a thing, she said in a way that made it unclear whether she thought it was a good or bad idea. Do they have a penchant for the work? Not the slightest. She nodded. Well then, I guess it's all right. You know what they say, have not a hand in the blade with abandon. The scythe smiled. I hope I can introduce them to your strudel sometime. She nodded at the two of them. Well, that goes without saying. After she had moved on, Scythe Faraday explained that she was a long-time friend. She cooks for me from time to time, and she works in the coroner's office. In my line of work, it's always good to have a friend there. Do you grant her immunity? Citra asked. Rowan thought the Scythe might be indignant at the question, but instead he answered, the Scythedom frowns upon those who play favorites, but I found I can grant her immunity on alternate years without raising a red flag. What if another Scythe gleans her during the off years? Then I shall attend her funeral with heartfelt grief, he told them. they shopped, Citra chose some snacks that the Scythe eyed dubiously. Are those really necessary? He asked. Is anything really necessary? Citra responded. Rowan found it amusing how Citra gave the Scythe attitude. But it worked. He let her keep the chips. Rowan tried to be more practical, picking out staples like eggs, flour, and various proteins and side dishes to go with them. Don't get chickenoid tenders, Citra said, looking at his choices. Trust me, my mother's a food synthesis engineer. That stuff's not actual chicken. They grow it in a petri dish. Rowan held up another bag of frozen protein. How about this? Sea steak? Sure, if you like plankton pressed into meat shapes. Well then, maybe you should pick your own meals instead of grabbing sweets and snacks. Are you always this boring? She asked. Didn't he say we have to live as he lives? I don't think cookie dough ice cream is part of his lifestyle. She sneered at him, but switched out the flavor for vanilla. As they continued to shop, it was Citra who first noticed two suspicious-looking teens who seemed to be tracking them through the store, lingering behind them, trying to look like they were just shopping. They were probably unsavories, who found enjoyment in activities that bordered on fringe and the law. Sometimes unsavories actually broke the law in minor ways.
Everyone ought to know the kind of shit we go through. And we sweat our asses off just to keep food on the table. No one's more than a pat on the back if you ask me. Which reminds me, what should we waste this coin on? I'm planning to drown myself in ale. Naira lit up like a fucking lancer when I told her the plan. Going on about getting a new bow and clothes and shit. That lass will be bouncing out of her boots waiting for us. And everyone will be quite rightly kissing my ass. World's changing. We'd be stupid not to change with it. Keep playing it safe, you'll stay broke your own miserable life. We pull this off, and just think of the fucking bright future ahead of us. You want fate to fall in line, you gotta grab it by the balls and squeeze. tin of shit for that. Hey, wait. You won't believe this. I almost threw my back out hiding in the bushes waiting for the bloody beast. And nearly got crushed under the wheel.
Yeah.
Eh?
What the hell is this? It's just a pile of rubbish. It's not worth a single coin. Are you sure you got the right wagon?
What? You're just lying through your teeth to keep all the good stuff.
You think I'm you? Go on, check it yourself which way. I was looking forward to a decent meal for once. Idiot to trust him.
This can't be right. I swear, this was the wagon I marked.
I can help you understand. You gave yourself away tailing them, so they cleared out the good stuff beforehand. By the way, it's obvious this isn't the right wagon. Just useless, as always.
Look, my dreams of drowning in ale. Wait, we can still get some decent coin. Plenty of shady bastards will buy something like this. You go sell the wagon. I'm gonna find out what the hell went wrong here.
performing. Make your best. Thank you, educators. Your dedication matters, and we're grateful for all you do. That's why General Motors is proud to provide you with a special offer on eligible new Chevrolet and Cadillac vehicles. Visit gmeducatorappreciation.com to learn more.
I think they gave us an